The mist covered the hills of South Terrace Hills like a protective cloak, wrapping Michael Foster's property in an almost sacred silence. The first rays of sun tried, unsuccessfully, to pierce that natural barrier, creating a melancholic yet strangely welcoming scene. Michael stepped onto the porch, steaming coffee mug in hand, and breathed deeply in the damp morning air. His eyes, tired from observing the world through the words he wrote, rested on the distant mountains. Another day, another blank page, he murmured to himself, feeling the weight of his chosen solitude. At 45, Michael carried on his face the marks of someone who had seen too much. A former journalist for major newsrooms in New York, he had abandoned his career after a series of events he preferred not to revisit. The decision to isolate himself on this property, inherited from his maternal grandfather, had been impulsive, but necessary. There, among dusty books and the creaking of the old floorboards, he sought to rebuild not only his career as a writer, but also his inner peace. He walked barefoot across the porch, feeling the cold wood beneath his feet. Something caught his attention, strange marks in the soil near the stairs, as if an animal had repeatedly circled during the night. He crouched down, lightly touching the footprints with his fingertips. Curious. The property was far from other farms in the region, which made the approach of domestic animals unusual. Occasionally a deer or armadillo would cross his domain, but never leaving such clear and circular marks as these. The phone rang inside the house, interrupting his reflections. With a sigh of impatience, Michael returned to the living room, where the old device rang insistently. "Hello? Michael, I thought you weren't going to answer." The animated voice of Claire, his editor and only remaining connection to the world he'd left behind, sounded from the other end of the line. "How's the next chapter coming along? The readers are anxious, and the publisher even more so." Michael closed his eyes for a moment. "It's progressing. I need more time, Claire." "Time is exactly what we don't have. We've already extended the deadline twice." The conversation continued in the same tone for a few minutes, Claire pressing, Michael resisting. After hanging up, he felt the familiar tightness in his chest, that sensation of suffocation that had accompanied him since leaving New York. He needed air. He decided to walk to the old shed at the back of the property. There he kept not just tools, but also boxes with childhood objects and books that no longer fit on the shelves in the house. The place had a peculiar smell, a mixture of damp wood, earth, and memories. While organizing some unfinished manuscripts, Michael heard a muffled sound coming from outside. It wasn't the wind, nor the usual creaking of the trees. It was something different, more urgent. He left the papers on an improvised table and went out to check. What he saw left him paralyzed. A brown goat, thin with eyes that seemed to contain a disconcerting intelligence, stood a few meters away, carrying in its mouth a kid that barely moved. The scene had something surreal about it, almost like a dramatic painting come to life. The animal showed no fear at his approach. On the contrary, it seemed to be waiting for him. Michael felt a shiver run down his spine. There was something familiar in those eyes, something he couldn't define. The goat gently placed the kid on the ground and took a step back, without averting its gaze. "What do you want from me?" whispered Michael, not expecting an answer. The wind blew stronger, rustling the leaves of the surrounding trees. The goat remained motionless, like a sentinel. The kid, small and visibly injured, emitted a weak sound that touched something deep in Michael's heart. At that moment, without knowing exactly why, he made a decision that would change the course of his life forever. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. Michael knelt slowly, as if any sudden movement might break the strange silent pact that had been established in that instant. The kid was trembling, its irregular breathing betraying its fragile state. A wound on its hind leg, with marks that looked like teeth, was covered with dried blood and showed a worrying swelling. "Hey, little one," murmured Michael, cautiously extending his hand. The adult goat remained motionless, observing every movement with a disturbing intensity. There was something in its eyes that transcended common animal instinct. There seemed to be trust. Or was it desperation? Michael couldn't decipher it, but he felt compelled to act. He took off his shirt and, with slow movements so as not to frighten the animals, wrapped the injured little kid. The kid weighed less than he expected, which intensified his concern. As he lifted it, he looked again at the goat, almost expecting a negative reaction, but it merely tilted its head slightly, as if in approval. "I'll take care of him," said Michael, surprised at himself for talking to the animal as if it could understand him. Carrying the kid carefully, he entered the house and quickly improvised a nest of soft towels near the kitchen's wood stove. Heat was essential, he realized, feeling the cold body of the small animal. He turned on an old heater he kept for emergencies and positioned it strategically, maintaining a safe distance. His knowledge about animal care was limited. He had grown up on that property during the summers of his childhood, but urban life had distanced him from this type of experience. Even so, something inside him seemed to awaken, an intuitive wisdom he didn't know he possessed. With trembling hands, he picked up the phone and searched the contact list left by the former caretaker for a number that might help. He found Olivia Anderson's, the local veterinarian who occasionally visited properties in the region. "Dr. Anderson, this is Michael Foster from the old Peterson property on Ridge Road. Yes, the writer. I need urgent help." He explained the situation hastily, trying not to sound like a madman rescuing kids in the middle of the morning. To his relief, Olivia didn't ask too many questions and promised to arrive in less than an hour, accompanied by Nancy Baker, an experienced goat breeder from the region. While waiting, Michael searched the pantry for something that might feed the kid. He vaguely remembered having read somewhere that honey diluted in warm water could help debilitated animals. He found a plastic syringe forgotten in a drawer, and after disinfecting it with alcohol and boiling water, prepared the mixture. "Come on, little one. You need to get stronger," he whispered, carefully administering a few drops of the liquid into the animal's mouth. To his surprise, the kid accepted the food, swallowing with difficulty, but with a determination that moved Michael. Its eyes, large and dark, seemed to convey a silent gratitude that left him with a tight throat. Every few minutes, Michael went to the window to check if the goat was still there. And he always found it, sitting in the same place like a patient sentinel. The scene had something surreal about it, something that defied the rational understanding he relied on so much. The phone rang again, startling him. "I still don't have the chapter, Claire," he answered automatically without looking at the caller ID. "Michael, it's Richard. Everything okay?" The deep voice of his older brother on the other end of the line brought him back to reality. Richard, a successful lawyer in Chicago, was the only family he had left, but the contacts between them were rare and usually tense. "Sorry, I thought it was someone else." "I'm fine, just busy with something unexpected. I just called to let you know I'll be in the area next weekend. We need to talk about the property. There are interested parties looking to buy the whole area, and the offer is considerable." Michael felt his stomach sink. The property, his refuge, his safe harbor was now threatened, but before he could respond, he heard the sound of a vehicle approaching on the dirt road. "I need to hang up, Richard. We'll talk later." He put the phone aside and went to the door. An old Jeep was coming up the dirt road, raising dust. He recognized Olivia, a middle-aged woman with gray hair tied in a practical bun at the wheel. Beside her was a serene-looking black woman, whom he presumed to be Nancy. As the vehicle approached, Michael noticed something strange. The goat, which had been sitting watching the house, was now standing upright as if it recognized the visitors. Its eyes seemed to shine with a new intensity. "So that's the situation, Mr. Foster," said Olivia, after carefully examining the kid. "The bite is deep, but with antibiotics and regular dressings he should recover. The most concerning thing is the dehydration." Michael observed attentively each movement of the veterinarian, absorbing the instructions about how to administer the medications and dress the wounds. Nancy, the goat breeder, remained further back, her dark eyes alternating between the kid and the window through which one could see the adult goat still motionless in the same place. "You said she just appeared with the kid?" asked Nancy. her hoarse voice carrying a typical accent of the region. "And she didn't run away when you approached?" "Exactly. In fact, I have the impression that she came to me on purpose, as if—" Michael hesitated, aware of how absurd it would sound. "As if she were asking for help." Nancy exchanged a significant look with Olivia, something that didn't go unnoticed by Michael. "What is it? Is there something you're not telling me?" Olivia sighed, closing her instrument bag. "It's nothing, Michael. It's just that, well, this region has its stories." "What kind of stories?" he insisted, feeling there was something important behind that hesitation. Nancy approached the kid, gently caressing its head while responding. "Stories about the animals of this ridge. The old-timers used to say that some goats aren't just goats." She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. "They said that they guard the secrets of the land, that they protect sacred places of the ancient tribes that lived here before us." Michael raised his eyebrows, skeptical. Although he was accustomed to rural folklore, he didn't expect educated women like Olivia and Nancy to give credit to such beliefs. "Are you telling me this goat is some kind of supernatural entity?" Olivia let out a nervous laugh. "What Nancy means is that there's a special relationship between some families in this region and the wild goats of the ridge. Historically, these animals have always been highly respected around here. My grandmother used to say that our indigenous ancestors believed that goats carried the souls of the ancestors," added Nancy, her serene expression contrasting with the mystical tenor of her words. "When a goat chooses to approach a human, they say it's because there's an ancient connection, a bond that transcends common understanding." Michael felt a chill run down his spine, remembering the strange familiarity he had felt when looking into the animal's eyes. He shook his head, trying to push away such irrational thoughts. "Well, folklore aside, what should I do with her? I can't just leave her out there indefinitely." "Actually, you can," Nancy responded firmly. "She'll stay nearby as long as the kid needs. That's how they do it. They're extraordinary protectors." Before Michael could question further, the phone rang again. It was Claire, his editor, insisting on the delayed chapter. The conversation was tense and brief. Upon hanging up, Michael felt the pressure increasing, as if the walls of the house were closing in around him. "We need to go," announced Olivia, noticing his discomfort. "We'll be back in 2 days to check how the kid is progressing. Meanwhile, follow the instructions I wrote down and call if you notice any change in his condition." After the two women departed, Michael found himself alone again, but now with an unexpected responsibility. The kid slept peacefully in its improvised nest, its breathing more regular than before. Through the window, he saw that the goat had finally moved, now grazing calmly near an old oak tree at the edge of the property. The afternoon advanced slowly. Michael tried to resume his work, to sit in front of the computer and continue the chapter he owed to the publisher. But the words didn't flow. His mind was filled with unanswered questions, fragmented images, and strange sensations. Nancy's words echoed in his head, mixing with memories of his own childhood on that property. He decided to take a break and check on the kid. As he approached the improvised nest, he noticed that the small animal had awakened and was watching him with those large, expressive eyes. An inexplicable feeling of tenderness invaded him. "I think I need to give you a name, little one," he murmured, noticing how its light coat contrasted with the dark brown of its mother. "How about Snowball? Simple, but it suits you." The kid moved its ears as if approving the choice. Michael smiled, surprised at himself for conversing with an animal as if it could understand him. Perhaps isolation was finally affecting his sanity. At night, while preparing a simple dinner, Michael heard a strange noise coming from outside. Through the kitchen window, he saw the silhouette of the goat outlined against the starry sky. Ta was standing erect on its hind legs, staring fixedly at the house. The vision was so unusual that Michael felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Looking more carefully, he realized it wasn't alone. There were shadows moving in the darkness around it, indistinct figures that seemed to dance among the trees. He rubbed his eyes, attributing the vision to fatigue and an imagination stimulated by Nancy's stories. The following morning dawned particularly cold. Michael woke with a start, with the persistent sensation that something or someone had been watching him during the night. The images of dancing shadows around the goat still populated his mind, blurred between dream and reality. His first impulse was to check on the kid. Snowball was awake, more alert than the day before, and trying to stand despite the injured leg. Michael smiled, feeling an inexplicable relief upon seeing the animal's progress. "Good morning, little fighter," he said, adjusting the blanket that served as a bed for the kid. "Let's take care of that leg." Following Olivia's instructions, he prepared the medication and dressed the wound carefully. Snowball proved surprisingly cooperative, as if understanding that those procedures were for his own good. After finishing, Michael prepared the nutritious mixture that the veterinarian had prescribed and fed the kid, who now sucked with more strength from the improvised syringe. "You're strong," murmured Michael, feeling an unexpected connection with that small creature. "Stronger than you look." A movement at the window caught his attention. The goat was there, watching attentively. Their eyes met, and he felt again that strange familiarity, as if he knew that animal from somewhere else, from some other time. The phone rang, breaking the moment. "Foster." "Michael, it's Richard. Change of plans. I'm arriving this afternoon. Not on the weekend. The buyer is eager and wants to visit the property tomorrow. I hope that's not a problem." The news fell like a bomb. Michael wasn't prepared to receive visitors, much less to discuss the sale of the property. And now, with the unexpected situation of the kid and the mysterious goat, he felt even more reluctant. "Actually, Richard, now isn't a good time." "I'm already on the road, Michael. It's not like you have a busy social agenda out there." Richard's condescending tone was familiar and irritating. "Do I need to remind you that you only own 40% of the property? The final decision isn't yours." The conversation ended tensely, as always happened with his brother. Richard, 7 years older, always treated Michael as an irresponsible dreamer, incapable of making practical decisions about life. The fact that Michael had abandoned a promising career in journalism to isolate himself and write only reinforced this perception. With his brother's imminent approach and the potential buyer, Michael felt cornered. He needed air. He decided to check the old shed to organize the papers he had left halfway through the day before. The shed had a peculiar smell, a mixture of dust, old wood, and something indefinable that he always associated with the passage of time. While organizing some boxes, he found an old trunk that he hadn't noticed before. It was made of dark wood with details in worked metal, visibly very old. "Where did you come from?" he murmured to himself, running his fingers over the carved surface. Upon opening the trunk, he found various items that seemed to belong to his grandfather. Yellowed documents, old photographs, personal objects. Among them, a worn, leather-bound notebook caught his attention. As he leafed through it, he realized it was a kind of diary or record book. Each entry began with the date and contained notes about the daily life of the property, from the weather to production and various occurrences. A specific entry made his heart race. June 10th, 1953. Today at dawn, I found an injured goat near the porch. It brought with it a newborn kid, also injured. Something in its eyes deeply disturbed me, as if there was an ancient intelligence observing through them. Marianne says it's nonsense, but I felt that the animal came to me for a reason. I decided to care for the kid, which seemed about to give up on life. I kept it warm in the back room and fed it with warm milk. The mother remained nearby, observing the house like a silent guardian. Michael felt his hands tremble. The similarity between his grandfather's account and his own experience was too disturbing to be coincidence. He continued reading, absorbing, each word like someone desperately searching for answers. June 12, 1953. The kid improves each day. Helen gave it the name Daybreak, for its light coat like the first light of morning. The adult goat continues nearby, and I've noticed that others have begun to appear at night, keeping their distance, but clearly vigilant. Joseph, the old foreman, told me that the natives considered these animals as guardians of ancient secrets. portals between worlds. I confess that before I would have laughed at such stories, but now... The entry ended abruptly, as if his grandfather had been interrupted. Michael anxiously turned the page, but the next entries dealt with mundane matters of the farm, with no mention of the goat or kid. It was only a few weeks later that he found a new reference. July 5th, 1953. Daybreak is completely recovered. Today at dawn I didn't find him in the stable. I searched the entire property without success. The adult goat has also disappeared. In the place where it used to stay, I found only a small arrangement of wildflowers, arranged in a circular pattern that seemed too deliberate to be the work of chance. Marianne says I'm imagining things, but I know what I saw. Something extraordinary happened here, something that goes beyond my understanding. Michael closed the notebook, feeling a mixture of fascination and unease. The story was repeating itself 70 years later, like an echo of the past resonating through time. The sound of tires on gravel pulled Michael from his trance. He quickly tucked the diary into the inner pocket of his jacket and left the shed, closing the door behind him. In the distance, a shiny black sedan was coming up the dirt road, raising dust. Richard had always been fond of expensive cars, Michael reflected with a resigned sigh. Instinctively, he sought out the goat with his eyes, which was now grazing peacefully near the back fence. For a brief moment, he had the impression that the animal was observing him, as if also evaluating the arrival of the visitor. Richard parked precisely in front of the house. As he exited the vehicle, his contrast with the rural environment was striking. Well-cut suit, Italian shoes, Swiss watch on his wrist. Urban elegance personified amidst the rusticity of the countryside. "Michael," he exclaimed with a smile. That didn't reach his eyes. "You look different." "That's what the country does to people," responded Michael, conscious of his unkempt appearance. Unshaven, hair longer than usual, simple and worn clothes. The brothers embraced briefly, a mechanical gesture that carried decades of emotional distance. Since their mother's abrupt departure 20 years ago, and their father's subsequent decline, the bonds between them had frayed until becoming almost unrecognizable. "So, this is your refuge from the civilized world," commented Richard, looking around with a mixture of curiosity and poorly disguised disdain. "It needs a good renovation, but the buyer sees potential, wants to transform everything into a luxury eco-resort." Michael felt a tightness in his chest. "Resort? Here?" "Exactly. The location is perfect, isolated yet accessible, with a view of the valley and the ridge, a refuge for stressed executives from the city. The irony is that you ended up being the pioneer in this concept, little brother." As they walked toward the house, a sharp bleat sounded from the kitchen. Richard stopped, frowning. What was that? Michael hesitated for a moment, considering whether he should share the story of the kid with his brother. He decided on the truth, or at least part of it. "I'm caring for an injured kid. The mother brought it here yesterday." "You? Taking care? Care of animals?" Richard laughed, incredulous. "You who could barely care for a goldfish in childhood?" Ignoring the provocation, Michael led his brother to the kitchen, where Snowball was trying to stand upon hearing the unfamiliar voices. Upon seeing Richard, the kid retreated, pressing itself against the towels of its improvised nest. "He's still recovering from a serious bite," explained Michael, kneeling to calm the animal with gentle caresses. "The veterinarian is coming tomorrow for a new evaluation." Richard observed the scene with an enigmatic expression, something between surprise and a hint of, could it be envy? "I never imagined you as a farmer." "Neither did I," admitted Michael, surprising himself with the sincerity. "But some things simply happen, without planning." The rest of the afternoon transpired in a tense equilibrium. Richard installed himself in the guest room and soon immersed himself in work calls, speaking loudly about real estate valuations and profit projections. Michael, for his part, divided himself between caring for Snowball and trying to advance his overdue manuscript, a task that proved increasingly difficult. During dinner, served on the porch to enjoy the cool night breeze, Richard finally broached the subject that really brought him there. The buyer made a generous offer, Michael. Well above the market value for properties in this region. With your share, you could buy a decent apartment in New York, or even continue with this hermit phase somewhere else. Michael took a sip of wine before responding, buying time. I'm not interested in selling, Richard. This property means more to me than just land and an old house. Is it about Grandpa? Richard sighed, impatient. He's been gone for years, Michael, and frankly, you didn't even get along with him that well. It was Dad and Mum who insisted on those endless summers. Here, while I at least had the good sense to arrange internships in the city, it's not just about Grandpa. Michael hesitated, unsure if he should share what he had discovered in the diary. There's something special about this place. Richard rolled his eyes, a gesture he had frequently directed at his brother since childhood. Don't tell me you've also fallen for these local folkloric stories. First you abandon a promising career to become a writer. Now you're embracing rural superstitions. The discussion was interrupted by a strange sound coming from the darkness beyond the porch. Both turned to look, but saw nothing beyond the shadows of the trees swaying in the wind. Michael, however, felt they weren't alone. Somehow he knew that the goat was nearby, observing, listening. Tomorrow you'll meet the buyer, said Richard, resuming the subject as if there had been no interruption. Lucas Vance is a visionary businessman, one of those who knows how to transform potential into reality. I'm sure that after talking with him, you'll see the sense in this transaction. Michael didn't respond. His thoughts were on his grandfather's words, on the mystery of the goats, on the strange sensation of déjà vu that hadn't left him since Snowball's appearance. There was something bigger happening, something that transcended real estate deals and fleeting fortunes. Later, alone in his room, he withdrew the diary from his pocket and continued, reading under the weak light of the lamp. He discovered more sparse entries about goat sightings over the years, always at significant moments in his grandfather's life: his mother's birth, the Great Flood of 1964, the illness that nearly took his grandmother. An especially intriguing entry caught his attention. There are patterns that repeat through generations. The guardians know they have always known. When the time comes, a foster will understand the true meaning of this place. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. The morning emerged wrapped in a dense fog that seemed to envelop the property like a protective cloak. Michael woke before dawn, restless after a night of confused dreams where goats danced under moonlight and his grandfather murmured secrets that he couldn't completely comprehend. He dressed silently, avoiding waking Richard, who slept in the room next door. His first action was to check on Snowball, who seemed remarkably better. The kid could now stand for longer, though still careful not to put too much weight on the injured leg. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" whispered Michael, caressing the head of the animal that responded with a slight movement of approval. He prepared coffee and went out to the porch, observing the fog slowly dissipating with the first rays of sun. The property seemed unreal, ethereal like a fairy tale setting. In the distance he distinguished the figure of the goat, standing on a small elevation, observing him. The animal remained there, always vigilant like an ancestral sentinel. "The guardians know they have always known," he murmured to himself, recalling his grandfather's words. The sound of the door opening announced Richard's presence, impeccably, dressed even in that rural environment. "Talking to yourself, brother. First sign of madness, they say," he commented with a sardonic smile, serving himself coffee. "Just thinking aloud. Well, I hope you're thinking about how to properly present the property. Lucas will arrive in a few hours and he's a busy man." Michael sighed, feeling the weight of fraternal pressure. "Richard, I haven't changed my mind. I don't want to sell my part." "Don't be irrational. What do you intend to do here? Raise goats?" The mention of the animal was accompanied by a look in the direction where the brown goat grazed tranquilly. "This property is deteriorating, and frankly, so are you." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of a car approaching. It wasn't the buyer, it was still too early. Michael recognized Olivia's old Jeep and felt an unexpected relief. "The veterinarian," he explained to his brother. She came to check on the kid. Richard rolled his eyes but accompanied Michael to the property entrance to receive the visitors. Olivia wasn't alone. Besides Nancy, there was a third woman in the vehicle, younger, with long black hair and a presence that immediately captured Michael's attention. "Good morning, Michael," greeted Olivia. "I hope you don't mind. I brought my niece, Rachel. She works at the Rural Union and is conducting a census of breeding in the region." Rachel Anderson, the young woman introduced herself, extending her hand firmly. Her brown eyes were penetrating, evaluative. "Olivia mentioned your unusual case, and I confess I was curious." Michael felt Richard's disapproving look, who clearly didn't appreciate this parade of visitors on a morning that should be dedicated to business. "My brother is exaggerating," intervened Richard, with his best lawyer tone. "He's just temporarily caring for an injured animal. Nothing that requires the attention of rural authorities." Rachel raised an eyebrow, visibly immune to Richard's professional charm. "Every animal under human care in this region is of interest to the union, Mr. Foster." Richard Foster, attorney and co-owner. The group headed to the house with a palpable tension in the air, while Olivia examined Snowball in the kitchen, expressing satisfaction with his recovery. Rachel observed everything with intensity, making notes in a small notebook. "His evolution is surprising," commented Olivia. "The bite is healing very well, and the hydration has improved considerably. You have a knack for this, Michael." Nancy, who until then had remained quiet, touched Michael's shoulder. "Can I speak with you privately for a moment?" Intrigued, Michael accompanied her to the porch. The older woman seemed agitated, her eyes constantly moving toward the goat that had now approached closer to the house. "It's not a coincidence," she finally said, in a low voice. "After Olivia told me about your encounter with the goat, I researched the old community records. Your family has a history with these animals, did you know?" "I just found out," responded Michael, hesitant. "I found my grandfather's diary mentioning a similar incident in the 50s. Nancy's eyes shone. "Then you already know. The guardians choose to whom they reveal themselves, Michael. It's not by chance that she brought the kid to you precisely now." "Now? What's special about this moment?" Nancy cast a significant look in the direction of the house, where Richard was animatedly conversing on the phone. "This land. There's something here that needs protection, something your grandfather knew. The guardians appear when there's a threat." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. Before he could question further, he heard the sound of another vehicle approaching. A black, imposing SUV was coming up the road with determination. "The buyer," he murmured, feeling a sudden anxiety. "Be careful whom you allow onto this land." "Michael," whispered Nancy, squeezing his arm with surprising strength. "Not all that glitters is gold, as the old ones used to say." Lucas Vance was exactly as Michael had imagined. Tall, artificially tanned, with a commercial smile that didn't reach his calculating eyes. He descended from the vehicle accompanied by a blonde woman carrying a document folder and a young man, with the appearance of an assistant, who immediately began photographing the property. "Richard!" exclaimed the businessman, embracing Michael's brother with intimacy. "And this must be the famous writer. Finally we meet." Michael felt an immediate aversion to the man, intensified by the way his eyes evaluated every detail of the property as merchandise. "Mr. Vance," he greeted coldly, "it seems you've already begun your inspection." "Just documenting the potential, my dear. This property has everything to become the most exclusive eco-resort in the southern part of the country. Look at this view." He gestured broadly to the Halley. "Imagine luxury chalets scattered across these hills, a spa in that lower area, perhaps even a golf course adapted to the natural terrain." Michael felt his stomach turn at visualizing the complete transformation that the man proposed. Suddenly he realized that not far from there, the brown goat had completely stopped grazing and was observing the group with a disturbing intensity. "This is the perfect location for the convention center," declared Lucas, pointing to a flat area near the shed. His assistant frantically photographed every angle of the property, while the woman with the document folder made detailed notes. Michael observed everything with growing discomfort, as if he were witnessing a robbery in slow motion. Richard, on the other hand, smiled proudly, already imagining himself as the architect of the deal of the year. The plan is to begin controlled deforestation next month, as soon as the documentation is formalized, continued Lucas, with the confidence of someone who already considers the deal closed. The preliminary geological studies are promising, but we'll need to make deeper perforations to evaluate the aquifer potential. Perforations? Michael couldn't hide his apprehension. Of course, a resort of this magnitude needs its own supply system. Our geologists believe there's a considerable aquifer beneath this property, possibly fed by underground sources from the mountains, a real treasure in the times of water crisis that we're experiencing. Rachel, who had joined the group discreetly, crossed her arms with a severe expression. The environmental licenses for this type of intervention are extremely restricted in this region, Mr. Vance. We're in a permanent preservation area. Lucas directed a condescending smile at the young woman. And you are? Rachel Anderson, representative of the Rural Union and the Environmental Preservation Committee of South Terrace Hills. The businessman wasn't fazed. Ah, yes, I'm sure that all the bureaucratic details will be duly resolved in a timely manner. My legal team is quite efficient in that aspect. The look he exchanged with Richard made the subliminal message clear. Michael felt his stomach turn. The visit continued, with the group moving to see the creek at the back of the property. Nancy took advantage of a moment when the others were distracted to pull Michael by the arm. "The shed," she whispered urgently. "He cannot see what's in the shed." "What do you mean?" asked Michael, confused. "It's just an old storage." The woman's eyes shone with intensity. "Your grandfather never told you about what exists beneath it, did he?" Before she could explain, they were interrupted by Olivia's approach. "Michael, the kid is restless. I think we'd better return to the house." As they returned, Michael noticed that the goat had disappeared from its usual post. A feeling of apprehension grew in his chest, like a premonition that something significant was about to happen. In the house, they found Snowball agitated, emitting anxious bleats and trying to stand with determination. Upon seeing Michael, the kid seemed to calm a bit but continued clearly disturbed. "What's wrong with him?" Michael asked Olivia, concerned. The veterinarian briefly examined the animal. "Physically, he's fine, maybe just missing his mother. Animals have intuitions that we don't fully understand." Nancy approached, observing the kid with a grave expression. "He senses something. The guardians always sense." The kitchen door opened abruptly, and Lucas entered, followed by his entourage. And Richard, his eyes immediately fixed on Snowball. "A kid?" he asked with a curiosity that seemed artificial. "I didn't know you were a breeder, Mr. Foster." "I'm not," responded Michael dryly. "I'm just temporarily caring for him." The businessman approached, analyzing the animal with an interest that seemed displaced from his real estate focus. "Interesting. This region has a historical tradition with goats, did you know? The ancient settlers believed that these mountains were protected by them." His tone was that of someone who considers such beliefs mere picturesque superstitions. Even today there are those who say that secret springs guarded by wild goats exist in the depths of these lands. An uncomfortable silence settled in the kitchen. Michael noticed an exchange of glances between Nancy and Olivia. "Just local." "Legends," intervened Richard, trying to regain control of the situation. "Lucas, I think we've seen enough for today. How about discussing the next steps?" While everyone headed to the living room, Michael remained in the kitchen with Snowball, trying to calm him. Rachel approached, her countenance serious. "You know what he really wants, don't you?" she asked in a low voice. "The water," responded Michael, understanding finally crystallizing in his mind. "It's not about the resort. It's about what's beneath the land." Rachel nodded. "Lucas Vance is known for acquiring strategic properties in areas with water potential. He controls 3 of the largest bottled mineral water companies in the country, all operating under different names." "But how did he know about this specific property?" "Old documents, probably. There are records from colonial times mentioning peculiar springs in this region, sources that never dry up even in the worst droughts." She made a significant pause. "Sources guarded by wild goats, according to the legends." A noise at the window drew the attention of both. The brown goat had returned and was staring fixedly into the kitchen, its eyes meeting Michael's with an almost human intensity. "It's not a coincidence," murmured Rachel, observing the animal. "My grandmother always said that the guardians appear when the land is in danger." Nancy said something similar, but what exactly are they guarding? Rachel looked at Snowball, who seemed calmer now, though his eyes remained fixed on his mother's. "Figure outside. Doesn't your grandfather's diary mention it?" Michael blinked, surprised. "How do you know about the diary?" A slight smile appeared on the young woman's lips. "My grandmother and your grandfather were close friends. She was the one who taught him about the secrets of this land." Her expression became grave. "Michael, you need to go to the shed now. There's something there you need to see before it's too late." At that moment, Richard appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Michael, Lucas wants to discuss the terms of the offer." His gaze alternated suspiciously between his brother and Rachel. "What are you two talking about so much?" "Just issues about caring for the kid," responded Rachel smoothly. "In fact, I was suggesting to your brother to check some medications we left in the shed yesterday." Michael caught the cue. "That's right, I'll be back in a few minutes." Before Richard could protest, Michael quickly exited through the back door. The goat, surprisingly, began to walk in front of him, as if guiding him. Snowball, gathering unexpected strength, managed to stand and follow them, limping determinedly. The goat advanced with firm and purposeful steps, while Michael followed it toward the shed. Snowball, still weak but determined, limped behind them, emitting small bleats as if wanting to quicken the pace. The scene had something surreal about it, as if Michael were being guided by forces he didn't completely understand. Upon reaching the shed, the goat stopped in front of the door, looking fixedly at Michael. Its eyes seemed to say, "The rest of the way is up to you." Michael opened the rusty door, which creaked like a lament. The interior was as always: old tools on the walls, dusty boxes in the corners, smell of earth and old wood. But now, with Nancy's and Rachel's words echoing in his mind, Michael perceived the space with new eyes. There was something more there. Closing the door behind him, Michael began to examine the floor attentively. He remembered a specific passage in his grandfather's diary that he had read the night before. "The treasure is where the midday shadow doesn't reach." It was almost noon. A thin ray of sunlight entered through a crack in the roof, projecting a line of light on the shed floor. Michael observed attentively the pattern of light and shadow, noticing that there was a corner that remained completely in darkness, regardless of the sun's position. He headed to this corner and began to move away the boxes that occupied it. Under them he found an old and worn rug. Upon removing it, he discovered what appeared to be a trapdoor in the packed earth floor, almost imperceptible to an inattentive eye. "It's here," he murmured to himself, feeling his heart accelerate. With effort, he managed to open the trapdoor, revealing a rudimentary stairway that descended into darkness. The air that rose from there was fresh and humid, carrying a mineral smell that reminded him of the caves he had visited in childhood. He hesitated for a moment, but an insistent bleat from Snowball, who observed everything from the half-open door, seemed to encourage him. Michael turned on his cell phone flashlight and began to descend the stone steps. The descent wasn't long, perhaps about 15 feet below the surface. Upon reaching the end of the stairs, Michael found himself in a small natural cavern, whose walls glistened with moisture. The space was illuminated by an ethereal blue light that came from an opening in the rock in front of him. He approached cautiously and discovered the source of the luminosity. A spring of crystalline water flowed from a crack in the rock, forming a small underground lake that emitted an unusual blue glow. It was as if the water itself generated light, creating a hypnotic spectacle of reflections on the cavern walls. "The Blue Spring," he whispered, recalling a passage from the diary that mentioned this name. Around the lake, he noticed ancient carvings in the stones, spirals, forms that resembled stylized goats, and symbols he didn't recognize. It was clearly a location of ritual significance for the peoples who inhabited those lands long before the colonizers. He knelt at the edge of the water, hypnotized by its clarity and supernatural glow. Without thinking, he dipped his hand in the lake and brought some water to his lips. The taste was indescribable, fresh, mineral, with a subtle sweetness that seemed to awaken every cell in his body. Suddenly, a succession of images invaded his mind. His grandfather, still young, sitting in this same place. The brown goat, also younger, observing him from the entrance of the cavern. Similar springs scattered throughout the ridge, all connected underground. Generations of guardians, human and animal, protecting the secret of the waters. When the vision passed, Michael sat down, stunned by the revelation. This wasn't just a source of water, but part of a unique aquifer system that fed the entire region. The waters had special properties, healing perhaps, and had been protected for generations, a knowledge carefully passed to those considered worthy. A noise on the stairs made him turn abruptly. Rachel was descending the steps, followed by Nancy and Olivia. "I see you found the heart of the property," said Rachel softly, her eyes reflecting the blue glow of the water. "You knew about this all along," affirmed Michael, not as an accusation but as a statement. Nancy approached, observing the water with reverence. "We all knew. We've been part of the Guardians for generations. Our families and yours, Michael, have shared this responsibility since the first settlers arrived." "But why didn't anyone? Tell me, why did my father never mention this?" Olivia gently touched his shoulder. "Your father rejected this legacy. After your mother's disappearance, he cut all ties with the ancient traditions. Your grandfather hoped that someday you would return and discover for yourself when you were ready." Michael absorbed the information, pieces of the puzzle finally fitting together. "And the goat? Snowball?" "They are guardians as much as we are," explained Nancy. "The animals sense changes in the land, perceive threats before humans. The goat came to you as a sign, bringing her kid as proof of trust. It was like this with your grandfather. And so it has been for generations." A noise at the entrance of the shed interrupted the conversation. Altered voices reached them, Richard arguing with someone. "We need to go up," said Rachel urgently. "Vance must have noticed our absence by now." When they emerged from the trap door, they found a tense scenario. Richard, visibly irritated, confronting the goat that had positioned itself firmly in front of the shed door, preventing the entrance of Lucas and his assistants. "What's happening here?" demanded Lucas upon seeing the group emerge. His eyes quickly noticed the open trapdoor. "What did you find down there?" Michael advanced, placing himself between the businessman and the passage to the cavern. "Nothing that's for sale, Mr. Vance. Every piece of land has its price, Mr. Foster, and I can guarantee that I'll double any offer you've received." Richard approached, confused by the situation. "Michael, what's going on? What's in that basement?" For the first time in years, Michael looked directly into his brother's eyes without hesitation. "Grandpa's legacy, Richard. The real treasure of this land," he turned to Lucas, "and it's not for sale at any price." Rachel stepped forward, her posture professional and firm. "Mr. Vance, I must inform you that this property has just been included in the state's protected natural heritage register. The documentation was approved this morning. Any attempt at drilling or significant intervention on the land will constitute an environmental crime." Lucas's expression oscillated between anger and incredulity. "This is absurd. Richard, you guaranteed me that—" "My brother doesn't speak for me," interrupted Michael. "And now I ask you to leave my property." For a tense moment it seemed that Lucas would protest, but something in the collective determination of the group, and perhaps the penetrating gaze of the goat, which hadn't moved an inch, made him reconsider. "You don't know what you're losing," he finally said, adjusting his jacket with forced dignity. "Let's go. Let's not waste any more time here." After the departure of the businessman and his assistants, Richard remained, divided between confusion and curiosity. "Are you going to explain to me what's happening?" Michael exchanged glances with the three women, receiving silent nods. Snowball, who had remained quiet during the entire confrontation, approached limping and gently rested his head against Michael's leg, as if in approval. "I'll show you," responded Michael softly, indicating the trap door. "It's time for you to know your true heritage." That night, after long hours of explanations, stories, and reconciliations, Michael sat on the porch, observing the starry sky. The goat was lying not far away, with Snowball nestled at her side. Both seemed more relaxed, as if a mission had been accomplished. Rachel joined him, bringing 2 cups of tea. "What will you do now?" she asked, sitting on the step beside him. Michael smiled, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in years. "Continue writing. But now I have a new story to tell." He paused, looking at the silent guardians resting under the moonlight. "And learn to be a guardian, too." "You already are one," said Rachel softly, following his gaze. "You always have been. You just needed to find your way back." The next morning, upon opening the door with his coffee mug in hand, Michael found a small arrangement of wildflowers arranged in a perfect circular pattern on the porch. He smiled, understanding the silent message of gratitude. The guardians would continue their vigil, and now he was officially part of that ancestral tradition, protecting the most valuable treasure of all, the source of life that ran silently beneath his feet, nourished the land, and connected past, present, and future in an eternal cycle of renewal. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from.